Okay, wow, here we are back already. I'll turn my camera on here. There we go. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Completed our work session. Now we're going to start our monthly board meeting here. We're recording this and everybody who was here at the work session is still here. We have full board, executive director, we have Sophia, and we have our legal counsel, Ben Cushman. So let's get into it here. First up is a review of the agenda. Are there any changes to what has been presented to us?
We adopt the agenda as presented.
Okay, it's been moved by Doug to adopt the agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by David. We will vote on the agenda then. Doug?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Betsy?
Aye.
Helen?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So we have an agenda. We have a fairly long list of consent items tonight, our consent agenda. I'm not gonna go through them all. But note that there's a lot of stuff there that's just reflective of all of the stuff we're doing here and all the many partnerships we have in this community and beyond. So we will we'll be looking for a motion here to well, I will point out one other piece here. We're item I, which is the rental policy and procedures update. I think that's worth noting because I think there was some pretty compelling information presented to us about the need to update that policy given some of our experience. So that's a good one. That I personally appreciate the staff was proactive about that and not digging a deeper hole in regards to the problems that we already have, but actually trying to fix those problems. So thank you all for doing that.
Absolutely.
And with that, I will say, we need a motion on the consent agenda.
A motion to approve the consent agenda?
Okay, moved by David.
I second that.
Doug got in just ahead of you there, Betsy, so we'll take Doug as a second. And we will vote on the consent agenda. David?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Betsy?
Aye.
Helen?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We have approved the consent agenda. Next up is public comment. This is the point at which anybody can talk to the board for up to 3 minutes on anything that's on their mind that might also be relevant to the district's business here. So is there anyone of you that wishes to make public comment tonight? Going once, going twice. We will close public comment. And then move to partner reports. First up here is NRCS. I don't think we have Lynn with us tonight. She was with us last month. So no report from NRCS. Looks like we have a couple people here from Department of Ecology. I see Molly Page and Gabe Rasso. Welcome. Which of you are gonna give us the update here this evening?
And I'm also from.
Oh, and of
Department
course,
Ecology.
I'm
Hello.
looking at the screen and you're sitting in the
Yeah.
room. So, hi, why don't you give us the report?
Really, the update is, check out our newsletter. It's item 5 in your packet. That's also, our newsletter is also relevant to staff because we often have blurbs about upcoming grants. But if you want to also check out water quality complaints that were ongoing and new that we're working on within the county, we also tally those there. And you can also read about our new supervisor, Gabe, who is actually on the call tonight. I will let him introduce himself. But then Gabe and Molly, if you'd like to provide any other updates, please do. And I should introduce myself. I'm Emily Davis. I have introduced myself already to many of you, but not all of you. I'm a water quality specialist in the Southwest region at the Department of Ecology.
Yes,
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
we can.
Yeah, so like Emily said, my name is Gabe Razzo. I am the newly appointed Southwest Region Watershed Supervisor. So Molly, Emily are part of my team, Travis as well, who I think sometimes attends. So I wanted to drop in, introduce myself, let everybody know that they can reach out to me at any time if they have any questions or want to chat, and I'd love to create some dialogue with you all, and I'll be kind of popping in and out as needed. And yeah, just happy to be working with all of our partners throughout the Southwest. So great to be here. Great to meet everybody. Happy to chat with anybody, take questions. Thank you guys.
Thank you for being here, Gabe, and welcome. Look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you.
Molly, did you have anything to add?
I think Emily and Gabe covered it all, so go on ahead with the rest of the meeting.
All right, thank you so much. And apologies again to you, Emily. I was looking at the screen and not to my
Totally fine.
left.
I'm just a weirdo lurking over here. I don't have a name tag. I'm the only non-board person sitting in the meeting.
But we have met before. That's my bad. So.
So,
Okay, so let's see. Let's move on here from that. I think next up is State Conservation Commission. I don't have the agenda here, but that's my recollection. And we have Jean with us tonight. Hello, Jean. Welcome.
Hello, nice to see you all. Hey, I just have two subjects I wanted to update you on. One is some staffing news that you may have heard by now, but just in case. As you know, our policy shop had been rather thin of late. We of course lost Ron Schultz, and then Allison Halpern left for another agency. Fortunately, our new executive director has a lot of strength in this area, but he's recently been joined by Kate Delavan, who you will know from the Office of Farmland Protection. She's still maintaining leadership of the Office of Farmland Protection while serving as acting policy director, but we're very glad to have that additional capacity there. She's been a huge help during session. So I just wanted to make sure that news had reached everybody. The other piece of news, also fabulous, is that Levi Kieseker is now the head of our science hub. This is a really exciting new development. We're a little behind in implementing it. The legislature provided the funding and the mandate for this, I believe, in not this most recent full session, but the one before. So we're a little bit behind, but Levi is, from my perspective, the perfect person to lead that. He's not only a natural resource scientist of some repute, but he also is a social scientist as well, and can communicate with non-technical people beautifully, which is a fairly rare thing in my experience. So if you've not worked with Levi yet, I recommend him to you. That's the staffing update. And then I wanted to present information on your CAP status. This is the time of year that I visit with, or at least try to visit with all of the districts that I work with about their status relative to legal and contract compliance. So the CAP, to refresh everyone's memory on our acronyms, is the Conservation Accountability and Performance Program. And it has several aspects, most of which are voluntary, but the first, which we call Standard 1, is a checklist that the regional managers go through for each of their districts that goes through legal compliance items and contract compliance items. And unsurprisingly, I'm finding no difficulties in filling that out in the positive for Thurston. As always, I find it to be a very well-run operation. Nothing but solid compliance for anything that I can see. There, when I'll send you a copy of the checklist with my little follow-up email that I do, and you will see a couple of items that are not checked. I just want to allay any concerns. That is only because the deadlines for those items have not yet passed for this cycle. And so it would be premature for me to mark them one way or the other. One is the election, just making sure that happens properly. And then the other is the SAO auditing audit report, which isn't due until May. So those two things you will see blank. Everything else you will see checked as in compliance. I'll provide a link to the program as a whole in case you want to refresh your memory about how all that works. But I'm happy to take any questions at all about those two items or anything else now, if you'd like.
Any questions for Jean? Yeah, Doug?
Gene, this is Doug. Can you
Hi, Doug.
speak about the March 20th special commission meeting?
Sure. It's it's tomorrow, right? The March 28th special commission meeting, I think you mean.
There's one on, I think the 20th of March.
There's a special meeting of the commission tomorrow, and then there's a regular meeting in March.
Okay,
Okay,
Thanks.
so you're talking about the one tomorrow, the special meeting?
yes.
I'm happy to do that. Yeah, so anybody who was able to attend the last regular commission meeting, there was an item that was discussed that the commissioners weren't ready to move forward on. It had to do with approving the guidelines for the riparian grant program. There was an item in the proviso language requiring, with very strong language requiring including tribes as partners in the development of that work. And between all of the turnover in our policy shop, that was not completed ahead of time in the way that it should have been. So we are significantly behind in meeting that that obligation. So there was some conversation about how to handle that. And that will be the topic of the special session, is how to move forward. The sort of preliminary idea that was discussed in the meeting, as I understood it, was that there would be a sort of a parallel track. Is one of the options that was discussed, that some portion of the riparian grants program, either in time or in funding, could move forward, while at the same time the commission engaged in a very robust engagement with tribes around these topics. And some of that work, as I understand it, has begun, and there's much more that needs to happen. It's, you know, we don't yet have a tribal liaison, and I think that would serve us well at the commission. I think we're a little behind, I would say, in this work generally, and it was particularly acute with regard to this program. So the meeting tomorrow, the commissioners will decide how to move forward, given that we are so behind in that work where we ought to be. We're so far behind where we ought to be, that's what I'm trying to say. How to proceed. That's my understanding of the goals of the meeting. Doug, have you heard it differently? I'd be curious if anyone else has heard it differently. That's my understanding.
I think you gave a good synopsis, and sorry, I got the dates screwed up.
No worries. Too many meetings.
Yeah,
Okay, well, it's always a pleasure to have you here, Jean. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And it's always good to get a gold star on your report card too, so yay about the cat news. All right, let's move on then to WACD and NACD. Doug.
okay, you probably noticed, at least I hope you noticed, you didn't get a written report this time because I was gone, or I had a meeting last night. So I couldn't see, so I'll do an oral version of it. WACD met last night, the board, presentations from the Palouse and Walla Walla CDs. Every meeting has a different emphasis on a different area of the state. So it was Southeast Washington this time. NRCS spoke. Lorraine rides at the door. No,
Comes at night.
Comes at night. Thank you. I've known her too long. One thing that I took from what she said was they're going to revamp the CSP to be more user friendly. So I think that's a step forward. People have been complaining about how unstreamlined it is. We had John Weiss, who's the FSA administrator for the state. They're working on CRP and CREP rental rates based on data and not somebody's, and this is a quote, silly wild ass guess. They didn't have a basis for how they did the soil rental rates, and some of them went up like 150%. It's like, holy cow. The rates recommended by the state are higher than what they use in the national guidance. So that's going to bode well, I think, if they get it passed through. So that was the big news there. And I mentioned already that WACD is going to have a spring ledge meeting on the 29th and 30th of May in Ellensburg. So that's the WACD part. Any questions on that? Okay. So moving on to NACD, the main topic was the national meeting held February 10th to the 14th down in San Diego. The day I got there, it snowed in some of the neighborhoods.
Wow.
And I left here when it was snowing, so I was a little disappointed. But it turned out okay. It was like mid-60s. It was really nice to walk along the beach and that. We had 5 resolutions from Washington State that went. The one on carbon sequestration, fuel breaks, and FSA communications and payments, they were all passed unanimously by the Resolutions Committee. The way the process works is we take resolutions as WACD to the national, they go through a resolutions committee that kind of spruces them up and makes them comport with the format that the ACD uses, which is pretty simple. And then it goes to a resolutions committee. And then if it passes the resolutions committee, it goes to the big board, the main board of NHCD. And I sit on both of those, so I was able to argue our 5. So the carbon sequestration, fuel breaks, and FSA communication / payments were all passed. There was a loan resolution, which is probably one you'll talk about in the committee you're on now, TJ. They wanted to tweak it a little bit, and I thought the tweak was more useful than what the language we had. We had specific language on specific types of practices, and they did it generic, so it'll be broader, which I think is a good thing. That went to the full board then and was passed unanimously. The contentious one was FSA contract cancellations. FSA canceled a bunch of contracts, like 800 of them or something, all over the state, mostly Whatcom, Whitman, and Spokane. Pretty big deal. And I argued that in the resolutions committee, and it was 12 in favor and 8 against. So I was kind of thinking, okay, that's probably what it's going to be about in the big board. And what I did was talk to the people that had reservations about it, what their problems with it were and why. And I actually convinced them all to change their vote. And the guy that was the strongest naysayer actually spoke in favor of it. So it passed unanimously too. I hope that was a good thing. So all 5 of our Washington State resolutions passed NACD. And the way the process is, and I haven't seen this documented anywhere, but it goes to a standing committee or one of the subcommittees, and they work it into their system. And if something comes up, where they can get it in earlier without those committees, they do that. It's pretty undefined. Even the government affairs staff couldn't explain it very clearly. More closer to home, North Yakima CD and WACD were both noted as being platinum level membership. That's a pretty big deal. Most districts don't do that. So Mike Tobin from North Yakima, I think, is to be commended for that. I'd like to see us do that at some point. That's $3,000 as opposed to $750. So big decision. The return on investment for the CDs for the NACD grants is $13 for every membership dollar we put in. So that's not bad. The Farm Bill conversation was pretty brief. The Government Affairs Director is Chris Young, and he basically prophesied, don't hold your breath to get anything done in 2024. We don't think it'll happen because they're still arguing about budget stuff now. And then in the summer, it'll be elections. And so save a gear. Ferry and Mason both got CD grants, both got urban grants for $2,500 for community outreach type stuff, and that'll help those 2 districts. They can use it. I know Ferry has gotten some conservation society grants on about the same level. It really helps. One of the really interesting things was we had a tour of the USS Midway, which was an aircraft carrier commissioned shortly after World War II ended. It was the first ship, as I understand it, that couldn't go through the Panama Canal because it was too big. The thing that struck me, well, there were lots of aircraft there, prop planes, jets, helicopters. The thing that struck me was all those cost of millions and millions of dollars a piece. That ship was billions probably. And that's one ship in one harbor. And those are all over the country. It'd be really nice if we could spend that money on something else. Was my takeaway from that. You know, I have no idea how much money all that stuff costs, but I thought if we could put that to conservation or social work, I think would be better off. I understand we need the military to understand that, and that there's threats, but that's what struck me with that tour. And that's it. Unless there's questions.
I have one question. We put forward a resolution to WACD around plastic, and recycling, minimizing plastic use. I've lost track of what became of that. Where does that thing stand?
With WACD,
So that didn't go to the national
No.
level.
no,
Okay, so it's in WACD's court to do something with that,
yes,
because it did pass.
yes.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
One of the questions I've always brought up, and I've never heard a good response. So how do you guys, WACD, prioritize which of the resolutions to work on? What do you do with the old ones? They go away after 5 years. So how do you prioritize those? What criteria do you use to decide what you're working on?
And as a board member, you don't know the answer to that?
No, I don't.
That's troubling,
Yeah, it is.
They're overwhelmed too, if I remember right.
Yeah.
which is all the more reason to have a
Mhm.
process to prioritize.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, all right, well, thank you.
That's been pointed out.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm not an original thinker in that regard. All right, thanks, Doug. Okay, let's then move to item 6 here. We have, an item here that Betsy, brought to our attention and, we decided to put on the agenda here. So Betsy, we did have something sent out about this, but would you like to speak to this, please?
Sure. Yeah, sorry, it was sort of short notice. I've been looking at it for a while, but didn't know how to proceed with getting the word out to you. My attention was first drawn to this by an email that came out from Americans for Family Farmers. And but the NRDC is behind it, opposing this. It's I don't know how it's part of the farm bill, but anyway, the House bill is 4417, and small farms would be really affected, as well as just local and state communities who would have very little say anymore about anything that's coming in across state lines as far as disease control, it would some like I think our community has some mandates for the school systems to acquire food from maybe veteran farms or from minority farms or women farms. This could be nullified. There's just all kinds of things, along with lots of other reasons like the litigation. I can send a link in the chat. Harvard, what's it called? Harvard Animal Law and Policy Program did an analysis of what this would all mean, and it's just a legislative boondoggle. So anyway, I don't know what options we have to add our voice to opposing this. That's for someone else to advise me.
Yeah, I'll just a couple things and I'll go to Doug. You mentioned you weren't sure how it relates to the farm bill, but just for everybody's clarity, a lot of times there'll be standalone pieces of a legislation like this that may get passed by Congress, and then it becomes part of the farm bill. So they kind of roll it into the farm bill. So this is not uncommon to do it this way.
I see, thank you.
The other thing I'll point out is that going back to my comments about the ag census, it's really kind of interesting. If you read different newspaper headlines, you'd get different messages about the ag census. If you read The Guardian in the UK, they said essentially that it's official. America is a nation of factory farms, and they go on to talk about how corporations have taken over our food system. If you read the Wall Street Journal, their headline was "Good News, Farm Profits Up," which is actually true too, because somebody's making more money. But it's the same corporations that are trying to push things like the EATS Act to further consolidate corporate control over the food system at the expense of local communities and family farms.
And I would add at this point that this is their second or third attempt to push this through. They the courts upheld the Prop 12 in California that was being challenged by the national pork producers.
Yeah.
So now they're trying it from another angle.
Yeah. Okay, Doug?
I went to the congress.gov website and looked this up, read the bill. I think Betsy, you have it right. There are 36 co-sponsors for it, all Republican, which tells you maybe something. I sent the link on to NACD saying, this looks like it flies in the face of locally led conservation to me. What are we gonna do about it?
Yeah.
So we'll see what the response is.
There's been a pretty broad effort to enlist sign-ons in opposition to this. I did that as a farmer independently, and I know they're doing a lot of outreach on that front. I suggested when Betsy and I talked about this, that we put this on the agenda tonight for possible action, because if we want to, we could take an action tonight opposing this and then make our opposition known to our congressional delegation, if that's the direction the board wants to go. And if that's
I'm for that.
something we're interested in, I would look to Betsy maybe to make a motion in that regard.
Yes, I move that we support opposition to this bill. House Bill 4417 and Senate Bill 2019, called the Ending Agricultural Trade Suppression.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by
Okay.
Betsy
Well-
and second by Doug. Before we wrote, Helen, you have a question or comment?
Well, yeah, I'm just wondering if we should include in the resolution that this should be forwarded, as you suggested, to our elected officials in, the congressional delegation.
Do you consider that a friendly amendment to your motion, Betsy?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's amended to include that we make our opposition known to our congressional delegation. Okay,
And I think we should send a copy to NACD and WACD.
okay, another friendly amendment, NACD, WACD. Okay, all right, everybody clear? Let's take a vote on this motion to oppose the EATS Act and take action after that. Betsy,
Aye.
Doug, Helen,
Aye.
David?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. We are unanimous. Betsy, can I ask you to work with staff to take those follow-up steps in terms of conveying our position?
I'll try.
All right, thank you.
Can I ask a real quick question? Maybe Doug, you know the answer, because you said you'd sort of looked at who's supporting it. Is it regional, or like is
No.
it Southeast, or
They're all over the place.
okay?
It's probably closely tied to political contributions versus regions, would
Yeah.
be my wild guess.
Okay, just curious.
It started
Okay.
in Kansas and Iowa.
Soybeans and corn.
And cows, yeah. Okay, all right, we've taken action on that. That was the only thing we had on whatever that was, item 7.
Legislative, yeah, there was an item in there for other, just in case there were other bits that
Yep.
the board wanted to consider.
Anything else people want to bring up under legislation?
I'll be willing to help on that later too.
Okay, Doug will help on that letter too. Great, thank you. Okay, then, let's move to governance here. We have a couple items up here. First is an update on our election.
Yeah, so you got information in your packet regarding the status of where we're at in the election. We've got lots of great informational materials that we've been sharing about how to vote, how to request a ballot, candidate statements, all of that. Thank you to Betsy, who has helped us fine tune some of that process. That's been really helpful and valuable in this. We're preparing for one of our big marketing opportunities, of course, for our election, which is plant sale this weekend. So we've got reams of information to disseminate about how to vote and just raising awareness about the election in general. And of course, we're going to bring the ballot box and chain it to a post there so that if folks want to drop off their ballot, they can. It's not advertised as such, but we got questions about it in the past. And so now we have that opportunity because our advertised space is here during business hours.
Does there have to be a certain distance between where you talk about it and where the ballot box is?
There is no electioneering near the poll site. You can talk about the election, but candidates can't be there campaigning.
I just want to make sure we're clean on
That was specific to poll sites, not ballot drop boxes. Still, we would probably ask them to keep
Separate
their
fuel,
space. Because folks have to call, request, and we mail them a ballot, there is a bit of separation from that pressure, but certainly if somebody did bring an empty ballot there, you know, that could be a gray area, so we would want to advise them otherwise. So that's great. The election's going very well. We've got some very well-trained polling officers. Some of them are returning. They really like to do this sort of special election piece, which is really wonderful to have that expertise built in. Again, we're kind of right in the middle of that process. That whole timeline is laid out on our website, including when is the last day to request mail-in ballots and when is the last opportunity to request ballots in person by coming into our office. Once that's done, we'll go through the ballot counting processes similar to last year and then forward that information on in a report to the commission, who then certifies the election in May. Everything's moving along very well.
Okay,
And you have 2 candidates so far.
In general, yeah.
that's all we
Yeah.
can have because the filing deadline is long past. Yeah. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I've gotten more questions about this election than I have my whole time on the board. And it's challenging because we by law cannot make endorsements, so I'm just certainly getting a lot of questions.
We always have a lot more volume and traffic when there's not an incumbent running, when there's new candidates.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You've had some weird ones too.
I have an additional comment.
Go ahead, Betsy.
Regarding little bits about the process that have troubled me. The 200-word limit. I would like to be sure that next year the candidates are made aware of that when they issue their statement, so that their statement doesn't just randomly get cut off without them knowing that, you know, it doesn't seem fair.
They do get all of the materials, including the candidate guidelines ahead of time.
So they should have known, you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. My bad.
Okay, let's move on then to the 2024 annual plan development.
At the January meeting, I shared with the board that we'll be moving into our annual plan update and development cycle. And asked that the board just take a look at our 2023 annual plan. Think about that, think about those pieces, and so that we could have some intentional conversation about it at this meeting. I included in your packet just a placeholder talking point. The entire plan is not a recommendation or a final draft or anything that's been synthesized from the staff, but I did update it to be a similar style plan from last year with lots of the 2023 metrics and components, but with our current year's budget information. So I'm hoping to hear some general feedback and discussion and direction from the board that I can incorporate in that plan draft. And then I'll plan to synthesize that, run that through the staff, and really fine tune the widgets that are associated in there based on the budget and work plan that we have for this year. And then bring it back to the board in a final draft form so you can have another review and then consider adopting. And staff are prepared to do that as long as the board is comfortable for the March meeting.
Yep. Okay. Comments on the plan? Helen?
Yeah, I mean, just certainly not anything about the plan overall, but what was it, a year ago, 2 years ago, we talked quite a bit about JEDI, equity and diversity and inclusion, all that sort of stuff. And if we're talking about what if I read the right document, there was a reference to translating materials, but that was about it. And I'm wondering if there might be a way to incorporate a bit more, discussion about ways that's been considered other than just translation of materials, and especially I would imagine in the outreach component, but not necessarily, because there are other places where that could be kind of rolled in. So I'm just wondering if there's been much thought about that, if it was kind of an oversight, or if it seems like it would be doable to talk a bit more about that as part of the plan.
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely enhance goals that are in there. One of the things that the annual plan does is break down into digestible chunks our strategic plan that did not carry a lot of Jedi focus in its language and its deliverables. So we are tracking progress on that strategic plan. However, we do have the opportunity in our annual plan to add additional elements. And we've done that along the way that are not in our necessarily captured in our strategic plan verbatim, but are expansions of those topics and ideas. One of the places that we see a lot more of our Jedi focus and work is in our annual reports. So we get to see all of the great work that we've done on that front in our reporting piece, even if there's not specific measurable goals listed in the plan. We can certainly do that. We do have existing projects. You approved some of the contracts tonight, even that are focused on equity work, into our annual plan, and staff can propose some of those, or if you have particular goals that you'd like us to start measuring and tracking, we can do that there, because the work is happening. And you're right, Helen, it's not focused separately in our plan. It has been more of a lens that we've applied to all of the work of our programs and services at TCD.
Okay, can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Doug.
Helen, did you have specifics that you think ought to be added?
Well, I mean, I do think that it's kind of there. I guess what I'd like it to be somehow incorporated into the language of the plan, so that it's clear that it's a policy priority. And so anywhere where a reference can be made to it, I think it would just be a good idea. It might just be a word or two, and it might be in the, like in the goals, maybe they could be sometimes expanded. The language could be expanded a little bit to be sure that if that is a part of the goal, that gets expressed as part of the plan.
That sounds great. I can think of several areas, Helen, where that would be really appropriate, and I can add those.
Okay. I'll throw a couple things out that I picked up on. The plan currently still talks about forming a citizens advisory committee. And we tried that a couple years ago, and we spent a lot of staff time and effort on it, and it went nowhere. And given the evolution of the organization since then, I don't really think we need a citizens advisory committee. I think we ought to just pull that piece out of our plan.
I'm good with that, particularly because we have so many tentacles out.
Yeah. Okay. Then the other piece is also in the plan right now. We're still talking about actively going out and bringing those areas of Tenino and Yelm that aren't in the district into the district. I don't think this is the year to do that. We're embarking on a political process around rates and charges. And while there might be some support to bring those people in, there's always going to be opposition to anybody getting a new tax put on them, even if you call it a rates and charge. So I think if those jurisdictions come to us, their city councils come to us and say, we really want to be in this thing, and it's coming from them, fine. But I don't want us to be actively going out and try to expand our empire, particularly this year when we're trying to solidify long-term rates and charges.
I think that makes sense, particularly with the workload staff has right now too. Well,
okay, I see lots of heads nodding on that, so we'll pull that one out. All right. Other comments or questions folks had on the plan?
Pretty happy with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just always impressed about the amount of work staff, not just Sarah, but everybody puts into this stuff to make it palatable and reasonable.
Yeah.
It's really good.
And yeah, digestible. Yep. So, so we had some work, stuff around Jedi. We're gonna take a couple pieces out and we'll see a final version of this, it sounds like in March. For board action. All right. Then, last item before executive session here is to, take a look at next month. And what's coming up for us next time.
That's small, because it's stuck up here. If we move it
Yeah.
down. Sneak it. It's hard when the Zoom bar is in the way of all your controls.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, there we go. So we have a work session topic list there. Looks almost identical tonight, just a different staff presentation. Well,
We could probably take new office update off of the
I think we could
Yeah,
probably
I'm
take
good
that
with
off
that.
at this point.
work session.
Yeah, it might be good to put something in there though, like legislative wrap up. Session ends next week and we should probably just have a recap. Take a look at what WACD and the State Conservation Commission put out in terms of what happened with the session.
Would you like me to invite a representative from WACD, like Ryan Bay or something, to come in and give a little recap to the board?
Sure, if he's willing to be here.
He's willing,
Yeah, willing and available.
he will be.
Okay, there we go. So we'll have a little guest speaker on legislative wrap up. Okay,
Great.
all right, and then the board meeting, looks at this point very similar to tonight, and as we know, things always come up. So almost identical to tonight's. So is that okay for a starting point for next month?
Can we, I suggest a change on 6B, the annual plan, development consideration of adoption.
Yeah, right, yeah. We need to make that clearly an action item. Maybe, yeah. Maybe we should say review and adopt.
Not predispose, that,
Well, that's true.
that
That's
actually
true.
already made the decision.
Yeah.
I had my. obviously-
Haven't we already made the decision in our heads, Doug? Okay, all right, so we'll use this as a draft, and we'll send this out and plenty of time to modify it before next month.
Do we still need the executive session?
Hang on one second, Betsy, you had a question on this?
Yeah, so I should have mentioned this but it just occurred to me. So I think for our partner updates that we're giving on a monthly basis, we really want to bring as much like value and information to you guys as possible. And I don't think we've ever asked, like, what do you guys want to hear from ecology? So maybe just something to think about, marinate on, like, do you find our little newsletter useful? What do you wonder about how ecology works with your staff? Like, what kind of information would you like to hear from us? I mean, we're committed to showing up and being a presence here. Along with working closely with your staff, which we already do, but I do want to make sure that board members fully understand the process by which ecology works with the CD and that we're getting the information to you that you need. So just putting the seed out there to think about, and if there's something more that we could be presenting to you in our partner updates, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. Well,
Yeah.
something for us to dwell on for next month. And now Betsy, you raised the question of whether we actually need an executive session next month. Is there?
For now, just to be safe.
Okay, Ben says keep it on for now to be safe.
We can take it off.
Yeah, it's a placeholder right now.
Okay,
And I'll just take this opportunity to say I will not be attending the next meeting in March. I'm going on a trip.
okay, thanks for letting us know. Where are you going? Someplace fun, I
Um,
hope.
Joshua Tree, Death Valley, mainly Big Bend. We're gonna go see the eclipse in Texas.
Oh, If you get to Death Valley soon enough, you can apparently go kayaking at Badwater Basin these days, so maybe you have that to look forward to, first time in 100 years.
Say this again, do what?
The Badwater Basin, which is normally dry at Death Valley, actually has enough water in it right now that people are kayaking in it for the first
Oh.
time in 100 some odd years.
Wow.
It's pretty
Oh.
cool. Google it. There's some interesting pictures out there.
Thanks, I'll check it out.
I would make one note on the partner reports. We've had discussion over time too about which partners and how you want to hear from them as the board. And, you know, it could be a great opportunity to do a check-in to see, is a verbal update from all of the partners something the board wants every month? Would you like it quarterly? Would you like it in written format so you have more meeting time to discuss things? So, you know, that's something I feel like we've provided a lot of feedback on, but not necessarily provided specific direction for staff to reach out to partners and do some different lineups or coordination. The board's also talked about bringing in episodic speakers from other partners and trying to fit that in. It has been challenging in terms of time, so
Yeah.
something for the board to chew on.
And I appreciate what she said. I got an FSA to come to these years ago. And after about 6 months, I said, don't bother coming anymore,
Yeah,
because there was no value.
yeah. That's honestly how I kind of feel about ecology now, like with the written reports, we don't really have much to say back to them. And I feel like I'm, particularly when they're, what is it, the ERTs?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what we're interested in, is knowing, you know, what the problems are and that we're resolving those, right?
And 3 staffers at one meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anyway, let's maybe think about that and make some decisions next month about how we want to handle partner reports.
I mentioned to Sarah.
Do you want to add that to the agenda then? Somewhere?
Work session maybe.
Yeah, let's put it on the work session. Good idea.
I mentioned to Sarah about having some of the land trusts,
Mhm.
some of the ones
Yeah.
we don't normally hear from.
Yeah.
Farm Bureau.
Sure.
I'll tell you a story after we get off the meeting here.
Okay, so I think with that, we are to the final item on tonight's agenda, which is an executive session. And is this actually tonight's executive session, or am I looking at next month's?
This is next month.
Oh,
Right, so let's go back to tonight's executive session so I can introduce it properly.
The same justification.
Yes. But for the record.
There's a lot more air traffic here than there was. At
There we
the
go.
office.
Okay, so we're going to start an executive session here shortly to discuss with our legal counsel litigation or potential litigation permitted under our CW 42.30.110.1. The expectation is we'll be in this executive session for about 10 minutes. The executive session will be attended by legal counsel, board members, and the executive director. We will not take action in the executive session, but we will report out after the executive session, and then we will adjourn the meeting. So with that, we will move to a breakout room for executive session.
We have a sign.
There's a little breakout thing here. Okay, we are back here. In public session, we just completed an executive session on potential litigation. We had discussion with staff and council, and we took no board action in that session. With that, we've come to the point that we need a motion to adjourn our meeting this evening.
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by David,
Oh, I'll second that.
somebody has to second or we're gonna be here all night. Thank you, Helen. Seconded by Helen. Vote on adjournment here, David.
Aye.
Helen,
Aye.
Betsy, Doug,
I'd rather stay here and suffer. I,
a reluctant aye, and an enthusiastic aye from the chair. So, we are now adjourned 7:37 PM. Thank you all for being here for, yet another productive evening.
good to see you.
Good to see everybody. See you next time.
Bye.